Welcome everybody to what is potentially the most significant session in the whole day today. And that's because we're not just talking about marketing. We're talking about a new currency, a new payment method, a new way of transacting business. Yep, we're talking about Bitcoin. And when I was out there preparing, I found this had appeared beside me, which is a little bitty coin. That's different. We're talking about Bitcoin. I don't know why somebody left me a tip of 2 pence. It doesn't really say much, does it? But anyway. So why are we talking about a currency at a marketing event? Well, it's pretty simple, really. If you're in the business of selling stuff, then you need to pay attention to people who want to buy using a different type of method from normal. So Bitcoin, if you've been reading the press, has had a lot of issues, and it's still quite a minor currency, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things. But it is growing in popularity, and especially amongst people who are early adopters. And there are also significant marketing benefits. One is that it can give you a great PR or promotional opportunity if you start to accept Bitcoin. At the moment, it's so unusual that you tend to get publicity. But there's also an automated PR opportunity where there are systems, there's an ecosystem of people that are interested in Bitcoin and interested in spending it, and they have a whole system for informing each other about where they can spend that money, and they're motivated customers. It can also give you a competitive advantage, or conversely, make sure that you don't get caught flat-footed and be left behind by your competitors. And fundamentally, you can help to meet the needs of an audience whose needs are not being met elsewhere, and if that's not a great marketing opportunity, I don't know what is. It could also be a great way to internationalize your business, and also if you're doing online transactions, it can improve your conversions, and your transactions can be cheaper and easier than if they were with a bank. So there's lots of stuff in there for us marketers to be paying a lot of attention to. And by the end of this session, I hope, I'm not sure, we'll try, but certainly by the end of today, the Drum would like to be selling some subscriptions using Bitcoin. So I want to just test something first of all. Could everybody put their right arm up in the air for me? Okay, can you all put your left arm up? Okay, you've all got 2 working arms, so we've established that you will be able to put your hand up when I ask you a question. So I'd like to know in the room, how many of you have either got Bitcoin or had Bitcoin or done any sort of transaction in Bitcoin before? Oh, we've only got 2. Right, you can have a sub each, okay? Okay, how about the level of knowledge then? How many would consider that they've got quite an advanced level of knowledge about what Bitcoin is? 1 or 2, okay. How many next to nothing? This was me about a week ago, so don't despair, and somewhere in the middle. Okay, so let's get started then. I'm going to introduce you to my panel. So David Sear is from Weve, and Eitan Jankelewitz is from intellectual property lawyers Sheridan's, and then we have Wouter Vonk. How did I do? No, okay. I'm going to call you Walter, as you suggested, from BitPay. And then Joel Raziel from Future Coins. That's great. Okay, I'm going to have a seat now. So first of all, I'm just going to ask each of you to explain to the audience what your involvement is in Bitcoin and give a bit of a perspective on where you are with it. So we'll start with you, Eitan, from Sheridan's.
So I work for a law firm. I'm a lawyer. A tech lawyer originally, well, I'm still. We've been advising Bitcoin businesses for about 18 months, and we act for all kinds of tech companies, but it's something we're trying to, and we are quite successfully pushing out and doing more and more of, and we accept payment in Bitcoin.
Okay, great. David from Weve?
I'm David Sear. I'm Chief Executive of Weve, and you might think, what the hell has Weve got to say about Bitcoin, which is a very good question. But there is relevance here in 2 forms. One is I've spent the last 20 years or so, not in media actually, but in payments. And if you have seen FinExtra this morning, you'll know I'm going back to payments actually, because it's been announced this morning that I'm going to be Group Chief Commercial Officer of the Skrill Group, which is one of the largest providers of e-money in the world. Next to PayPal, really, I guess. So I have a newfound interest in Bitcoin, but also a small enthusiasm, which has been watching it develop over the last few months and years. And I really think, and I'll certainly have to talk more about it, but I think the strategic value of what it represents is only just beginning to be seen. and some of the developments that are coming along the line, which I'm sure these guys will know more about than I will actually, I think really change business and the exchange of value over time. So I'm pretty excited about that, but I'm also intrigued about what people have got to say about how it will work for businesses and consumers moving forward. And I now have a professional interest again as of this morning.
Oh, we hear all the breaking news at the Drum
There you
Line.
go.
You got that down, Natalie? Joel?
I wasn't a very early adopter of Bitcoin. It's been around for several years, but when I first came across it, I found that Bitcoins were remarkably cheap by comparison. And I speculated, I spectated quite a while, and when I saw the big difference,
Not both.
No. Well, one to the other, but I started by spectating, and I found the price starting to increase. I was so excited by the concept of money you could actually own, that you didn't need to put in a bank account. You didn't have to rely on the decisions of a government to dictate how valuable your money is. If your government goes to a war, what can that do? I mean, recently in the Ukraine, you'd watch currencies in Russia depreciating by 10-15% because of a decision of their political party. Now, Bitcoin, it does fluctuate, but that's based on, at the moment, more on media, but it's a step in the direction away from putting faith in governments and putting faith in banks, who are notorious for gambling our money and also increasing huge amounts of debt and lending, and that's how we've got ourselves in this mess. And by using a currency which you actually own, it's much closer to something like gold, where you actually possess it, you hold it, and it has value, and it maintains that value. So I saw Bitcoin as something quite fun and exciting, and I thought maybe I should try and invest some money in it myself. So I went online to try and buy some Bitcoin, and this became a very, very difficult process. They wanted various, there's all sorts of regulation, and they also wanted me to send the money to them using an overseas transfer, which I couldn't organise through my bank that day. And I thought, okay, I'm going to wait a few days, and I'll do it next week. I thought, yeah, why not? Bitcoins are, I don't know, £3, £4 maybe. Yeah, I'll do it next week. That's fine. And the next week turned into next month, next year, 2 years, and suddenly the price of Bitcoin is, I don't know, £800. Now, if I had bought them that day for £2, £3, and I was going to spend a good £500,000, I'd be really comfortable right now. and that really touched a nerve with me. Here's this parallel universe where there's another Joel there, driving a, I don't know, God knows what. I can't even think what I'd buy with that money, but I'd be so comfortable, and that really upset me on some level. And that's kind of what led me to create Future Coins, which imported the UK's first Bitcoin ATM, which currently sells Bitcoins to any one of you in 10 seconds flat for cash. And that's based just up the road at the old Shoreditch station, on the corner of Old Street and Kingsland Road. And that's what I've been doing since, and that started in February, and since then I've been planning on bringing over more ATMs and moving into remittance payments, and sending money to Africa and Pakistan and India, so allowing migrant workers to send funds back to their home countries, which is something that Bitcoin could be amazing for. Sorry, I'll leave it there.
That's really good. Great, thank you.
All right, Wouter Vonk. I'm working for BitPay, and my background is actually e-commerce and marketing. And I've been working for several retailers, big retailers in the Netherlands. And 2.5 years I got in contact with Bitcoin, and like these guys, really enthusiastic about it, and I started trading a bit. And eventually I found out that this could be really huge, and maybe the next big thing after the internet. And I decided to run my own company by then, a Bitcoin related company that sells gold and silver online. And well, currently that's the biggest European web shop that sells gold and silver online for Bitcoin. So I'm not the biggest gold and silver dealer, unfortunately. But we're doing pretty well, and 1 year ago BitPay came to me, and well, I started working for them. I sold my company, and what BitPay does is we help merchants to accept Bitcoin, and we do that with 0% risk of the volatility. So we take the risk and we make sure that merchants can accept Bitcoin through us. And currently we have 40,000 merchants signed up. We do about 1 million in Bitcoin transaction per day. And we're growing fast. The company is now about 60 people. And we just opened up our offices in Amsterdam, in Argentina, and most of the development and the headquarters is in US.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so when I said earlier that a week ago I didn't really know anything about Bitcoin, that wasn't false modesty, that was absolutely true. So the way that we're going to play the session is that I've got a list of questions that I'm going to ask the guys. Because as managing director of the Drum, if we're going to do this, I need to understand the implications, the risks, and actually how you do it. And then hopefully at the end of the session, there's a little gadget down here beside me, which hopefully we'll be able to do a demo of how you would make a transaction in Bitcoin. So if there's any questions that you've got, is anybody thinking of starting to accept Bitcoin in their businesses? One person at least, 2 people. All right, okay, Gordon, great, thanks. So we're going to start off then, first of all, asking, let's start at the end. What are the risks to a business of taking Bitcoin? Because there's a lot of bad press.
Well, for a business taking Bitcoin, there is none at this moment if you would do it via BitPay. No, so the way this works, because this probably doesn't really explain itself, what we do is we offer the people the opportunity to accept Bitcoins, merchants, and customers can pay with Bitcoin. So there is certainly there is a lot of risk with Bitcoin at this point, and one of them that is most spoken about is the volatility. And the customer actually has a risk of keeping that Bitcoin because the price can go up, the price can go down, and your Bitcoin can be worth $100 less the next day. And but for a merchant side, there are companies like BitPay that take that risk for you. And if somebody pays something at your website for $1 or £1, sorry, we're in Great Britain here, £100, we just transform that into the current Bitcoin exchange rate, and we offer that to the customer. He sees, well, £100 that would be averaging 1.4 Bitcoin. They pay it. We exchange that to pounds, and we settle that the next day on the merchant's bank account. So there is no risk for merchants because there are companies that want to take that risk. And where is our financial benefit of that? Well, we either charge 1% on the fee, or we have got monthly plans, and we just put that away on the Bitcoin exchange, and we make sure that we also make some profit out of that.
Okay.
So yeah, for merchants, there is definitely no risk at this point if you want to start accepting it. And I think that's also the first step to get Bitcoin somewhere, because there are people owning Bitcoin and they want to spend it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And more merchants accepting that makes it more acceptable around the globe.
Mm-hmm. David, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd turn it around in a different way, actually. The risk to you, and not necessarily you, actually, as an organisation. I think there probably are use cases which are much more valuable as it stands right now, in all fairness. But, you know, all power to you for being a pioneer, by the way, and looking at the space. But the simple fact is, the risk to you, if you don't embrace digital currencies as they emerge, is actually is a risk of not doing business with a slab of the world, right? Because if you go online, there's actually a website where you can see where Bitcoins are being bought around the world. And because it's open source, you can actually see that happening in real time. And if you watch that map for 10 minutes, you'll see that the people buying this currency, there's a significant slab coming out of relatively closed economies, and particularly China. And recently, the Chinese central bank said that Bitcoin wasn't a currency, and everybody went, oh, they've outlawed it. But actually, that was the reverse of the truth, because if they called it a currency, no Chinese people would have been able to deal in it because of the way in which they control access to their own currency and foreign currency in their markets. So there's actually, under the guise of what was prohibition, the Chinese actually effectively sanctioned the purchase of Bitcoins by the general population and liberalized, in a very interesting way, their own e-commerce and m-commerce access to the rest of the world. So here's the maths, right? Biggest population in the world, largest economy in the world, most closed economy in the world. is about to open, and one of the ways it does it is through this kind of digital currency. If it's not Bitcoin, it's a successor. So if you want to sell to China in the next 20 years, you better get on board with some kind of digital currency, because it's going to be the way that it happens.
Okay. Yeah. Make a note. We're going to get into China first with that one. I mean, there's no one really more risk averse than a lawyer's firm.
That's true.
Is there?
It's absolutely true.
And here you are pioneering something that other people see as quite risky.
There are, as it's been mentioned, there are risks to it. We accept Bitcoin through BitPay. It's not a small law firm. There's about 45 lawyers, and we've been around since the 50s, I think. So we're established. We're kind of old school in our own way, and in spite of that, it actually wasn't so difficult to convince the partnership to do this. Because of the way the payment processor works, we receive what we would have received anyway the next day. So if the bill is for $1,000 or $2,000, it's what we get. Ordinarily, we would pass on payment charges to onto our clients. So especially if it's a payment for abroad, then it means that it's actually easier and cheaper for them. We have Bitcoin clients who were interested in doing it. They were kind of what originally were agitating me to agitate, internally to try and get something to happen. And it's really kind of, it's just so easy to do. There's no reason why not to do it. The implementation for us was minimal because we don't transact on our website. We issue paper invoices. So there's an online dashboard which allows us to issue electronic invoices. And the client clicks the link, QR code pops up. It's valid for 15 minutes, I think. It's 15 minutes, so BitPay are taking a chance on 15 minutes volatility. If you don't use that QR code in that 15 minutes, then they have to refresh and get a new one. So if there's been a change in the price, you'll get a different QR code. But the client pays the time at that particular moment. We receive what we want at that particular moment. It's just, to us, it works like another payment channel. There are partners in the firm who are interested in it and have bought Bitcoin, but we're not buying them in return for our advice. We convert the Bitcoin into sterling, which is the same as what we do with dollar and euro. We always receive. We always convert them into sterling because that's what our expenses are in. I don't know if that would always be the case if we had, suppliers that would accept it. Probably a bit away for now, but if you work with a payment processor, there is absolutely no risk.
I mean, the other thing to say about volatility is, that's a fact of life of any currency. It just happens that this one is younger. People are more uncertain about its value, and therefore it has a greater degree of volatility at the moment. Anybody who prepaid for a holiday in the United States from the UK 6 months ago will have got a significantly better deal, a worse deal rather, than they would do today, given that we just hit 171, right? So that's a significant shift from the 150s to the 170s on a major currency. That is multiple percentages. I can't even do the maths on it. But don't be under the illusion that volatility is a problem in relation to this currency. It's a normal state of affairs for any currency. The question is, will it stabilize? Will it become used in more sort of mature use cases? Will therefore it be less volatile in the way people hold it and use it for speculative purposes? And the answer is inevitably yes, right, as it becomes more ubiquitous. So, great that some people are helping to manage that risk, but that's not the reason to not do business in this space, right? It's just a normal course of events. I would actually expect, if you look forward longer, this kind of digital currency would become a replacement for the dollar as a means of international trade, and therefore become one of the most stable currencies in the world because it will have a known value of exchange. That would be the ultimate aim for it.
I think just to put this all in some context, it's so early. I mean, it's unbelievably early. The code, it's only been out for 5 years, but the first few years nothing was really going on, and it's version 0.8. I mean, it's still technically in beta if you're interested in those sorts of things. And the infrastructure is just getting into place. We've got exchanges, stable exchanges are established, payment processing, this kind of thing. the volatility it should decrease when the market matures and you have more distribution of the currency, and also things like options and other derivatives which enable you to enable people to hedge, and algo trading and stuff, which will hopefully take away some of the wobble. But it's extremely early days. I mean, there's a long way to go. It's got a lot of potential, but it's got a long way to go to fulfill that potential. And I think it's important to bear that in mind. This isn't the finished article.
Mm-hmm.
It may not even be the case that this is the currency that takes off. There could be another currency built along the same lines, which has a different feature set, has that one killer feature, and that becomes, Bitcoin could be Netscape. We don't know, but it doesn't mean it's not pioneering and groundbreaking. It's just very, very early.
And Joel, we had a chat outside about how some of the press have reported Bitcoin as being related to criminal activities, money laundering, that kind of thing.
That's something that Bitcoin as a whole has to overcome, is trying to prevent adoption by criminal syndicates, money launderers, and that regulation is kicking in. I mean, the exchanges have a very, very high AML process you have to adhere to, so it definitely exists. I think we're definitely beyond that now. That was the fact that media attention does cause press do cause fluctuations. There was a story where a April Fool's article on a Bitcoin news desk there was claimed to cause quite a great fluctuation in it,
right.
but I don't know if that's just hearsay.
I think it's a bit of hysteria as well at the moment, right? Indeed, there is a tipping point going on here, and it will probably prove itself in the next 12 to 18 months as to whether this is Napster or it's Spotify, to use an analogy, right? And that's exactly, I think, a good one to think about, really, because Napster created a lot of the momentum in the music sharing space, but obviously without the framework around it that could actually make a lot of the players in that space comfortable and not want to crush it. If you look at what the banks are saying at the moment about Bitcoin, it's a sort of roughly 50-50 split, with a sort of silent majority still in the middle. Those who've declared have either gone, no, it's awful, right, and they're sort of seeing it as a threat, or they're hyping up some of the negatives to make it look that way, or they've actually said, we've had our lunch eaten by PayPal and every other single person in the market, including Skrill, actually, over the course of the last few years. We need to be on board with something that's clearly got value. And I think to see so many of them early adopting, actually, is probably the most significant thing, which gives me confidence that it will survive and it will be, accepted. And the other thing about it is, it's not something that's owned by somebody. It's not a Napster in that sense. And that, I think, is its great strength. The fact that it is this collective code that's been created, that is therefore a shared repository for everyone who wants to be involved in it. And that is quite robust against attack, provided we don't see too much hysteria about the way in which it's being used.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to a little comment on the media is all the time still commenting on the terrorist funding and the child pornography that could be funded with Bitcoin. Exactly the same thing happened when internet came.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing. Nobody knew how to use it. It was way too technical. A lot of people said, well, we're not going to use it for anything because it's only computer nerds doing some stuff. Well, the same thing is happening now with the Bitcoin thing. It's open source. It's really technical. Nobody understands anything. Well, the mainstream people don't understand it. And governments were thinking about, okay, so this could be used for internet pornography. It can be funding. It could be funded with for terrorists. And what we see right now is that everybody's using the internet, and it's being used for Facebook, and it's being used for, well, everybody knows what the internet can do. And I think it's really interesting to put it in a perspective of where the internet was in the early days. Bitcoin is in that same phase, and nobody knows how to actually treat Bitcoin right now, and nobody knows what it actually can do. But it can do much more than funding terrorists.
I think the dollar is still the primary source of terrorist funding. I don't think there's many people buying rocket launchers with Bitcoin yet. I think it's all dollar-based, but yet we're not trying to bring down the dollar for that purpose.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there was mention of a bank there. if I go to my bank and tell them that we're going to start accepting some of our sales in Bitcoin, how do you think they're going to react? My local bank manager, are they going to know what I'm talking about? Anyone want to chip in?
It would land in the account from BitPay.
Yeah.
So it would be into your normal account. It would be in your normal currency. It would come through a payment processor. I mean, it would be the same as it came through another payment processor. There are stories of people who are selling huge amounts of products in Bitcoin, and getting great big payments into their account coming through payment processors, and that generally does draw some attention. I think that banks are even more risk averse than lawyers. Well, depending on the risk, they may like some of the risks, but I think that overall it doesn't tend to cause problems. It doesn't seem to be so unusual. If you're going with a payment processor, if you're holding the Bitcoin itself, your bank wouldn't even know because you are your own bank. That's the point.
Yeah. Doesn't go near them. Okay. And are auditors likely to be comfortable with it? Joel, do you want to?
Well, I think you'll probably be more suited to answer this question.
Okay.
Yeah, well, basically all invoices are still in the local currency, so that is what the auditors wanted to see. And if you're gonna hold a percentage in Bitcoin, that's up to you, and that's your risk, of course, if it goes up and down. But you still need to pay for the taxes that was on the original invoice. So there's not really, for the auditors, it's actually not that difficult. Only when you're really going into 100% Bitcoin, well, you still have to invoice it in Great Britain pounds. So, but that's not really a difficult part.
In the UK, there's a full tax treatment for Bitcoin. Remarkably, we met with HMRC. The HMRC back in November. They made a statement that it was a single-use prepaid card. So you pay, which is a kind of a nonsense if you actually consider what the two things are. But they said it was a single-use prepaid card equivalent. So you pay tax when you buy the card, and then, i.e., you would end up paying tax when you buy the Bitcoin, and then you'd pay tax on the product or service you buy with that Bitcoin. So you get done twice. So we went back. We spoke to them. They sort of unsaid that statement. Went back, and then they'd prepared this full tax treatment, which it's very progressive. It shows a great deal of understanding, I have to say. And if you are a business and you're holding Bitcoin, then it tells you what to do with capital gains tax, with income tax. If you're an individual, what happens, how you treat it for VAT. It's all there. And amazingly, if it's your your operational currency or functional currency, you have to file your accounts in Bitcoin as a consequence of this judgment. So. Well, it's not a judgment, it's it's an opinion or a statement or something. But yeah, so if you're an oil dealer and you're trading barrels of oil and you're doing that in dollar, even though you're based in the UK, you file your accounts in dollar, and then you work out what tax you owe, you convert some of your dollars to sterling, and you pay your taxes. And it's exactly the same thing you would do. We have clients who don't have a bank account, they get paid in Bitcoin, they pay their expenses in Bitcoin, they operate only within Bitcoin, they don't need a bank account. And they're going to have to find an accountant who's going to do it in Bitcoin.
So I'm going to ask something about, how do you use it to pay your own suppliers? But so tell me a bit more about a company like that. Then, so would they pay their staff in Bitcoin? Does the payroll go through? And then, if I got paid in Bitcoin, would my mortgage provider like that? Would my electricity provider like to be paid in it? I mean, how does that work?
Well, right now, no is a short answer, but. This particular business is a tech business, and their main expenses would be the staff and the servers, and both of them are paid for in Bitcoin.
How do the staff spend their?
Presumably, the staff
convert it.
Will have to, or I mean, there are a lot more places than you would think that accept it, and you'll hear about some pub in Hackney now you can buy a burger in Bitcoin, which is good, but also you have things like Takeaway.com, which implemented the payment, basically. So now all of a sudden there's 7,000 curry houses and Chinese takeaways where you can pay in Bitcoin. So it's when these aggregators get involved, you get these huge scale. There's a prepaid gift card that you can pay. You can buy it in Bitcoin, and then you can spend that at Best Buy and whatever. So it's kind of a hack, but it's a way to spend it. I mean, you can get things for it, absolutely. It's early days, it's not
ASOS
everywhere.
as well. There's a company called BitFash which allow you to shop at ASOS using Bitcoin.
I think an ASOS is a really interesting example of a company, by the way, who recently had a stock market crash in their share price, not on the back of a Bitcoin, but on the back of the fact that they didn't adequately hedge the foreign currency risk in their business at the moment. So they had stock that they bought at one price. There was a big movement in sterling versus dollar and the euro, and suddenly their business is in a different place because they can't actually make the margins that they thought they were going to make because of that. So they didn't really look after their own balance sheet from the point of view of making sure that their profits and their margins were protected and hedged as normal businesses would do. So this is not a sort of a new debate. You know, I would work for 7 years at Travelex prior to Weve, and I helped 34,000 importers and exporters around the world move money to pay for goods and services. There are two things about that process which are really difficult for those businesses. One is it's too bloody slow, right? Big banks and smaller banks around the world have taken so much of our money for so long, making it difficult for you to move money across border, right? And we circumvented it by creating this web of bank accounts around the world so we could do domestic transfers rather than having to go through convoluted 7-day processes for international transactions. And the second thing is, you know, they needed protection against fluctuations in currency. They needed the help to do that. So what you're seeing emerge in this space is a single digital currency which is not subject to the whim of, you know, a reserve bank in America deciding to print on its own accord trillions of dollars to prop up the world's economy, right? It's not that. There is much greater risk associated with that activity than you will see in Bitcoin at the moment. And you're seeing something where you're bringing currency into the 21st century, and you can finally exchange real value as quickly as you can exchange a text message around the world. So, you know, those are the two major pieces that shift international trade. And in all honesty, you know, buying a burger with it is good fun and interesting PR, but it isn't what this is about to me. It's about how it really shifts the dial in remittance, in international trade, in moving money in a way that's actually going to make sense in a digitized world.
It's probably better. That's probably a better use case than as a currency.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay. Laura, were you waving a sign at me?
For Q&A.
For Q&A, okay. So we've heard a bit about what it's all about, and also really interesting to hear it was your customers that drove it within your business. So I'd like to get a bit of practical advice now. We have actually tried to do some of this in the last 2 days, but how would you prepare as a business to accept Bitcoin? What do you need to do?
Well, it's depending on what kind of business you have. If you have a brick and mortar store, then we got, as BitPay, we got really easy tools that you can just download from the website or applications on your tablet, and you could instantly start accepting Bitcoin. You just put in your bank account if you want to have it settled in the currency of your choice, and we give the people the possibility to even choose if they want a certain percentage in Bitcoin, if they want all percentage in Bitcoin, or if they want 100% no Bitcoin. If you have a web shop, there's tons of written code that can be instantly implemented on your website, and well, basically it's just a matter of get a developer and fix it in a few hours, and you can accept Bitcoin with no risk.
Okay, that sounded easy. It kind of
I mean,
was.
we set it up.
It kind
right?
of was a little bit. It was a little bit easy, yeah. We did it in the space of probably 36 hours or something from.
Yeah. Well,
Something
okay,
like that.
about 2 days. 2 days
Yeah.
for a development implementation is not
Yeah.
so long for the most companies,
Yeah.
I would say.
Okay, so in a few moments we're going to attempt to do a transaction for you live on the stage. But first of all, has anybody got any questions that they want to ask?
As a merchant, if I'm going to take a new payment mechanism, it may be because it's opening up a new market, it's faster conversion, less friction, people buy more stuff. The other reason might be it's cheaper for me or it's better financially. How much does it cost to accept Bitcoin? So if I've got £100 that I want to charge someone,
Well, we get at BitPay we got different plans. So if you want to start, we got a 1% plan, which is already much cheaper than most payment systems. But the more interesting plans are the monthly plans, and the plan you could, for example, go for would be a $30 plan, which would be 20 pounds, I would say, probably a bit less per month, and then you have no transaction fees, and that's the only fixed fee you pay, and then you can get up to 100,000 pounds in per day transaction. So we really also are focusing here on that Bitcoin can make it easier and especially more cheap for you. So that dollar plan, just to maybe to reflect a bit on my business I was running before, the gold and silver business, there's a lot of big amounts going there, like an order of 10,000 euros, 8,000 pounds is not unique. We get that a lot. And if people would be paying with PayPal, or if they would pay with any other payment system, then most of the time they're charged 2.5%. Well, that would be a lot on those amounts. And if you then have a $30 plan, well, that's the only thing you save. So you only on that order you would already save a lot of money there. So those are the plans we have. Yeah.
How does that compare to what you pay your bank at the moment?
It varies depending on the mechanism you're using. Debit card quite cheap through to some of the wallets which are much more. But you're making your money, I guess, on the exchange rather than transaction fees.
Both. Yeah, both.
There was another question somewhere. Yes.
Yeah, we've looked at it from a merchant's perspective, but if you're over the standing start where you want to spend bitcoins, where do you start with buying those bitcoins? I took some tentative steps.
I'll probably take that question.
And there's websites where you can meet people in person.
That's true.
Swap. But both 2 or 3 sites where I found what I found for exchanging real currency for bitcoins. One of them you had to go through Linden's second life currency. Another one, it looked like it gone through, and then I was told it was a security risk and they couldn't do it. PayPal doesn't allow you to buy bitcoins directly. So where do you start? How can you get under the skin of this as a consumer and therefore as a merchant? How are you going to sell your stuff in bitcoins? No one can buy them first.
Well, that's we've seen, I think, 6 or 7 ATMs arrive in the UK over the last 3 months. I'm personally ordering another 10, and I imagine that they're going to become quite prevalent.
Outside of ATM, because when I was in the Dominican Republic, and
yeah, of course. Well, there'll probably be one there in the next few months, I'm sure. Outside of the ATMs, exchanges, local exchanges, there are local exchanges in the UK where you can do it by bank transfer from a UK account to their UK business account, and that happens instantly. So, I mean, when I started this, there wasn't really a service like that, but they are, I mean, what you want is a localized exchange, something local, rather than sending your money to one in Eastern Europe or America, which is going to take time to process. So I imagine that as local exchanges set up, that might help things.
Yeah, recently there was an exchange that implemented faster payments in the UK, so that's I guess.
Faster payment.
Yeah, so it's an internet payment, internet banking payment. We have a client which does it. It's an internet bank payment, but you pay the seller directly, and the site escrows the Bitcoin. So you see it that way. That I bought from there. It takes about 5 minutes. Most of the online exchanges will ask you to do KYC. That's the headache. You have to remember to bring your passport and take a photo on your phone and send it in and that kind of stuff. And then I guess they manually check them and.
I mean, I think as time moves on and it becomes much more accepted and legitimized in terms of who's playing with who, one of the problems is at the moment, I think, is nobody really knows who to trust, right? Which is a fundamental issue for any payment system. But it's beginning to shift, and you're beginning to see the emergence of some new players. If you look at the business I'm going to, although I'm not making a strategic statement on their behalf, right? Because I haven't got there yet. They have 40 million wallet holders around the world, and they also have a business called PaySafeCard across Europe, which has got around 8 million active users as well. I mean, that kind of user base would be, and providing they've already got a relationship of trust with Skrill, is going to be interesting if you can get the right legitimate way for them to buy Bitcoin through that wallet. So I think there's lots of ways in which this can develop and to be more freely available to people, and I'm sure that will be so as time moves on.
Yeah, so to give my philosophy on it as well, you can of course buy them, but it wouldn't make sense that if you want to spend them, that you're first going to buy them and then spend them. So our philosophy is that if you start accepting them and you just get a percentage in it, or 100% in Bitcoin, then you will get those Bitcoins, because it doesn't really make sense buying Bitcoin and then spending them again. So in your way, if you have a business or you sell something, and you know somebody that has Bitcoin, then just start accepting, create a wallet and start accepting Bitcoin.
I've also been approached by more than one large telco companies that have asked me for advice on how they can set up global payment networks through Bitcoin. So you may find that you can send a text message from your phone or use an app on your phone, and sooner or later they'll be providing that service for us. So you could have a Telefonica app or O2 app and purchase your Bitcoin through your phone.
So at the moment you've got to show a passport or something in order to go from standard start.
Generally on an online exchange you would. With an ATM you probably wouldn't, but then you may have a limit to it. Did you have withdrawal limits on?
I have withdrawal limits, but you can scan maybe an ID and get that increased.
Okay, any more questions? Natalie?
Hi, a question for David. What opportunities do you see at the Scroll Group?
For me personally? Yeah. I'm not sure I'll happily answer that question afterwards. I'm not sure the whole room wants it.
Within this area?
Within this area, I mean, it's huge for the whole of the payments business if it's legitimised and it's created in a way that is sustainable moving forward. Skrill has not entered this space at the moment, and until I get there, I can't tell you whether or not that's the primary objective of our strategy. The business has got 40 million consumers at the moment, plus another 8 million who use a internet-based payment service, which is voucher-driven, called PaySafeCard. So, we're in this space, and we will be watching this and figuring out how to make that valuable for our consumers as we can manage that risk and do it well. So I'm sure that it'll be a part of the future, provided we see what we talked about develop here, which is the stability, the creation of known, trusted parties in the space. And brands like Skrill could definitely play a role in that. But as I'm sure they would say if they were here, and because I'm not with them yet, there's many things that Skrill can do. It's expanding at quite a rate across many geographies around the world as well. So there's lots to do.
Okay. Oh, another couple of questions. Just quick ones.
Yeah. I know that every transaction in Bitcoin is recorded and publicly viewable, and you can see what's happened. So is there not a fear that governments will start scrutinising this, and when they make it legitimate, over sort of scrutinise this information and start making it too trackable and too personal, and ruin the anonymity you sometimes have with currency?
It's a weird thing. I think there'll be, I guess my take on that is there'll be the fundamental ability to have it as a proper currency, as in stored value, which is not at the behest of any central bank around the world, I think is a very powerful element in its value proposition generally. And there is an element of anonymity, I can't say the word, that goes along with that. But I think, and it's something we perhaps haven't talked about enough on this panel, is if you look at the way in which it's developing now, and I'm not a scientist on this stuff, I've just been reading a lot about it, the currency is moving towards a position where you can hard code certain conditions into it. And that has a profound effect on securities and exchange, the ability to say at a certain predefined condition, this particular asset changes hands, in this case a Bitcoin changes hands. That shifts the whole way in which a lot of banking works at the moment, and a lot of financial instruments work, if it matures in that way. At a more mundane level, right, you could have a rule that said, if by some miracle Germany were to beat Brazil by 7-1 in a World Cup semi-final, then I get 100,000 Bitcoins, or whatever it is, and you get poorer, right? That would be brilliant, right? But that's actually possible within the context of the way in which the currency is developing, that you can actually hard code that kind of conditionality into it. So I think it's got profound effects for a lot of industries, which is why actually I think it's so interesting. And the trackability is less relevant to me than the dual capability of being an independent currency, digital currency, which acts more like a currency itself, and then having the ability, which is what the technology brings to it, to be intelligent money. That is just going to be phenomenal.
Could you maybe ask your question after we've finished, if that's okay? Because we're just going to try this. We're going to try and make a bit of history here, people. We've established that there are no Bitcoin users, particularly, apart from on the stage. So you are going to make a bit of history, one of you, I hope, by being the first subscriber to the drum to pay in Bitcoin. I know, we should be paying you, and here you are paying us. That's not fair. So we have this little terminal here. This is not the kind of history like being Churchill or Alexander Graham Bell, but still, it's our attempt. So who's going to help me to do this? I'm looking at you.
I can definitely set you up with it.
Okay.
Who we got?
So
can everybody see this? That's a
yeah.
bit of the.
So it's the equivalent of working with children or animals. Probably not a good idea,
It's
but
in dollars, so we need
it's in
to.
dollars. Is that okay?
Let's make this.
Are you discounting over there? I never said you could have a discount. So we'll make it $20.
Okay, so we're gonna how.
You can do this yourself later. Incidentally, we do have a subscription form, hopefully on the seats around you, so you can try it for yourself. So can you just talk us through what you're doing?
Okay, so what is going to happen here? This is just a terminal, and it's really easy. I just put in an amount of pounds in it, and with 72. I put £1 in it, so I'm not sure how the expensive.
I'll tear a couple of pages out of one issue. And
maybe you can advertise for £1. So what it does is this £1 will now go through our API, and what means is it will now check the current Bitcoin exchange rate. It will check real time what the exchange rate is. It will calculate that £1 into a Bitcoin. And currently, I'm now seeing a screen where I can actually pay with it, and it just transformed the £1 into 0.0018 Bitcoin at this point. So
it's a bargain. 0.018. A bargain.
So you will get your first Bitcoin at the drum. So do you want to pay it?
I'll buy it. Yeah. It's the cheapest magazine subscription I've ever had in my life. I'll definitely take it.
Yeah.
You're off our sales team now, okay?
Yeah,
you're done.
I'm a marketing guy, not a sales guy. I'm sorry. So what's going to happen right now is just going to scan the QR code, and it will instantly be paid, and the drum will be settled with £1 tomorrow. If you set it on 100% pounds, I'm not sure what you did.
I'm not sure either.
Not sure either. Well, you might have some Bitcoins then tomorrow as well. All right. So it's being scanned, it's being paid, and now, well, instantly, what we see is that the invoice is being paid.
Okay, that should
Fantastic.
be it.
I can verify that is happening, by the way.
You couldn't connect it to the screen, unfortunately, sorry. But there you go. I do believe we are now the first UK magazine to have sold in Bitcoin. So thank you for your help in that. And thank you to all the panellists for all the contributions. Thank you.